in little different groups, and I'm in between them. I don't really fit in with any particular one. No one can be part of the genderqueer group and the F to M group. I kind of try to exist in both, but don't really fit in either one of them. I'm too out for the F to M's, because a lot of them are stealth, or I live as a man, but I don't identify as a male, and I think that's totally possible. But that confuses a lot of people, because I use men and women in my language to represent gender identity and presentation, and male and female specifically for sex identifiers. I'm comfortable with the fact that I'm not male-bodied, was not assigned male at birth, but I can live as a man, and that's okay with me, and I don't have to be male-bodied. That threatens a lot of the people down here, and I've just come across so many trans guys down here that need to believe that they are completely 100% physiologically the same as a male person, and I'm not, and I'm okay with that. It wasn't until I went to a different place I found out that there's groups of trans men who find the term bio-male offensive, because they consider themselves equally biologically male, and it didn't occur to me that that could be offensive to use that term, and I stopped using it. I don't really refer to non-trans men as bio because it offends a particular group of trans men, but to me I don't find it offensive because I consider myself different physically, and it doesn't make me feel inadequate as a man. Having visited other cities and different areas of the country, I can see that my transition probably would have been a lot easier had I done it somewhere else. My gender fluidity and the fact that I identify as a femme would have been much more supported than it was here. Because there are people who are F to M or masculine identified who are also femme identified in different parts of the country, but I have not found that here. Even the guys that used to identify as butch don't identify as butch trans men. They just become men. Whereas in other places I've noticed someone who's butch identified can transition and still be a butch identified person. You're kind of a man or you're not. And if you're a femme, you're not really a man. They definitely consider me more like their girlfriends, and that's fine because I actually get along with their girlfriends a lot better. There's a group of radical femmes here, and they've been the most supportive to me, but I'm the only guy there. So it's a little odd. I don't necessarily mind, but sometimes I do want to be in sort of a more masculine environment. Being a femme guy has its own specific things that we have to deal with, and I haven't met anyone else around here like that. But I know that they exist. And, you know, when I've talked to other people about how hard it is to be the only guy like me here, to be the only person who identifies as a femme, the only person who strongly identifies as F to M and as trans and not as a male, they've said that as much as I'd like to go away and that it would be easier for me in another place and that I would possibly have more friends in another place, that my being here has been important to the rest of the community. I've definitely had to explain to some trans men what genderqueer means because they never even heard what genderqueer is. There's some guys that have never encountered the genderqueer community. They were just guys, and they transitioned, and there was only the transsexual experience. This is the South, and a lot of people here live in the country, in a farmland, and there's not much else for them to see but the guys that work in farms.
It was really difficult for me when I first started coming out as trans because it felt like there was this really set image of what it meant to be trans, and that if you didn't have this like DSM criteria of like trying to piss standing up when you were like, 3, then people were like, oh, well, you're, not really trans, and that's fine if you want to be a guy, but it only has to be, it can only be this kind of guy. And that was really frustrating for me because I never wanted to be a normal girl, so why would I want to be a normal guy? Like, that just isn't who I am. I don't really feel like I fit into either binary. I don't feel like I'm a man. I don't feel like I'm a woman. I don't know, I guess that just makes me somewhere sort of in between. I want to look male and I want to present that way, but there are a lot of social connotations associated with that I don't really necessarily want. I am a rising junior at Mount Holyoke College. It's the first all-women's college. When I started coming out as trans at an all-women's college, it did pose a lot of really ethical questions. And there was a part of me that was like, what am I doing here? Am I, invading space? People come here and they expect to be in an all-women's environment that I think is really important and essential, and that women have a right to have that environment, and I totally respect that. So at first I was like, am I devaluing this by just being here? I lived 18 years of my life as a woman. I love women. I think that they're great, I still really, really relate to women, and I've had a lot of those experiences, and I'm very much a feminist, and I believe in them having that space. And because of my experiences, I think for me to just say, oh no, I'm trans and I'm gonna go to a co-ed school and not be around women, whatever, for me it just doesn't really fit how I've lived my life because of the life that I lived before, and I do really value those relationships that I've had with women while being there. And just the overall experience has been amazing. It's really frustrating because everybody suddenly gives a shit about trans guys going to all women's colleges, but they're not willing to say anything about trans women. In all honesty, I think if they're gonna have a policy out of it, I should be kicked out and a trans woman should be let in. Because really, if we're gonna say we're an all-women's college, you have to, being a woman, functioning as a woman, isn't about being female, it's about being presumed to be female. And I mean, I think it's bullshit, to be honest. I really do. Especially for a place that prizes itself on such safety and diversity. People need to understand that not all women were born this way or have a vagina or whatever. Who cares? When you say the issue of trans women, people are just like, oh, well, we'll deal with that later. But trans women are just as much part of the transgender and queer community as trans guys are. They deserve that right out of anyone to be there. Michigan Women's Festival, I hear so much of oh, well, there's not really an official policy about trans guys being there, but there is a common consensus and attitude about trans guys and trans women being there, in the sense that this is a place for women who are born as women, who identify as women, and women-loving women, and women with a Y. I just think that in a community that is oppressed and that has suffered a lot, why are we drawing these unnecessary divisions? It just doesn't make any sense to me. And it happens even within trans guys, they're drawing lines, pre-op, post-op, pre-hormones, on hormones, never gonna take them. Who cares? We're all just transgendered. Why does it matter? Trans means going between. It doesn't mean 100% identifying as male. I'm never gonna 100% identify as male, and I never 100% identified as female, and fuck it, I don't care. I don't need to, I'm perfectly happy in my gray area in between, and just because I want to present as male and because I'm taking tea doesn't mean that I've sold out in any way. It just means that that's how I'm going to be physically happiest with myself. It doesn't mean the mental component of me is changing, and it doesn't mean that I still don't identify as genderqueer, genderqueer is very much a part of who I am and always will be, and I always wanted to be there, I never want to lose sight of that because that's really important to me.